Hi guys, Miss Hall here with our first video on the Middle Ages. Today we're going to learn a little bit about the Middle Ages, which is also known as the medieval period or the Dark Ages. This is the period from about 500 to 1450, and of course everything from now on will be AD. And it's known as the Middle Ages because it came between the fall of Rome and the start of the modern era. And we're going to focus most of our discussion on the Middle Ages in Europe. So we're going to talk first about medieval Europe. Waves of invaders swept across Europe after the fall of Rome, and trade slowed to a trickle, towns emptied, and learning virtually ceased. Europe was basically a backward region, and it was largely cut off from the advanced civilizations in the Middle East and China and India. It was considered a frontier land, which is a sparsely populated and undeveloped land on the outskirts of civilization. But it had great untapped potential. There were dense forests that flourished in the north, and the rich earth was much better suited to raising crops than the dry soil around the Mediterranean. Underground there were mineral resources, and nearby there were seas that provided fish for food and good transportation. There were also large rivers that were ideal for trade, and mountain streams that could turn water wheels. Now, this rich frontier land known as Europe was first populated by the Germanic tribes, and these Germanic tribes were quite different from the Romans. They were mostly farmers and herders, and they didn't live in cities or have written laws. They lived in small communities, and they elected kings to lead them, and there were warrior nobles who swore loyalty to the king in exchange for weapons and loot. Between 400 and 700, the Germanic tribes carved up Western Europe into a lot of small kingdoms. The strongest kingdom was that of the Franks, and in 486, Clovis, who was king of the Franks, conquered the former Roman province of Gaul and ruled his new lands according to Frankish customs. But he did take an important step when he decided to convert to Christianity, which was the religion of Gaul. And not only did he earn the support of the people, but he also gained a powerful ally in the Christian Church of Rome. The European Christians were stunned when the Muslim armies overran the Christian lands from northern Africa to Spain, and when this Muslim army crossed into France, Charles Martel rallied the Frankish warriors. At the Battle of Tours in 732, these Christian warriors triumphed, and to them this victory was a sign that God was on their side. The Muslims did not advance any further into Europe, but they did continue to rule most of Spain, and their presence was a source of anxiety for the European Christians. In reality, however, these medieval Europeans would learn much from the Muslims, whose learning in many areas exceeded their own. Around 800, Western Europe had a moment of unity when the grandson of Charles Martel built an empire that reached across France, Germany, and part of Italy. The emperor is known to history as Charlemagne, or Charles the Great. Charlemagne loved battle and spent much of his reign fighting. He fought the Muslims in Spain, the Saxons in the north, the Avars and the Slavs in the east, the Lombards in Italy. His conquests did reunite much of the old Roman Empire. In 800, Pope Leo III called on Charlemagne for help against rebellious nobles in Rome. Frankish armies marched south and crushed the rebellion, and on Christmas Day, the Pope showed his gratitude by placing a crown on Charlemagne's head and proclaiming him Emperor of the Romans. The ceremony had enormous significance. A Christian pope had crowned a German king, successor to the Roman emperors. In doing so, he revived the ideal of a united Christian community. He also laid the groundwork for a desperate power struggle between the future Roman Catholic popes and the German emperors. The pope's actions outraged the emperor of the Eastern Roman Empire in Constantinople, who saw himself as the sole Roman ruler. In the long run, Charlemagne helped widen the split between the Eastern and the Western Christian worlds. Charlemagne wanted to make his court a second Rome, and to do so he set out to revive Latin learning. Education had declined so much that even the supposedly educated clergy were often sadly ignorant. Charlemagne himself could read, but not write, but he saw the need for officials to keep accurate records and write clear reports. Charlemagne founded a school under the direction of a respected scholar, Alcuin of York. Alcuin created a curriculum or formal course of study based in Latin learning. It included grammar, rhetoric, logic, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. He also hired scholars to copy ancient manuscripts, including the Bible and Latin works of history and science. This system would become the educational model for medieval Europe. Charlemagne died in 814, and his empire soon fell apart. His heirs battled for power until his grandsons, in 843, drew up the Treaty of Verdun, which split the empire into 3 regions. Still, Charlemagne left a lasting legacy. He extended Christian civilizations further and blended German, Roman, and Christian traditions. He also set up a strong and efficient government. Later, medieval rulers would look to his examples when they tried to strengthen their own kingdoms. Over the next few weeks, we'll learn more about those future medieval rulers. Make sure you go back and review this video and are ready for your quiz.